I'm joined by Nadim Houry from Human Rights Watch, who's monitoring the situation in Syria from your Beirut offices. Nadim, give us your take on these reports of a mass grave in Daraa.
Sure. Syrian human rights groups have told us that Daraa residents have found two mass graves, one containing 24 bodies and the other containing 5 bodies, the 5 being from the same family, the Abi Zaid family, a father and 4 of his sons. We don't have independent confirmation of this. The Syrian authorities last night denied that there were any mass graves, but then a few hours ago, an official in Syria told the Al Watan newspaper, which is a Syrian newspaper very close to the regime, that yes, they did find 5 bodies and that the bodies had been returned to the family. So mixed messages from the Syrian authorities, obviously more investigation, but very worrisome developments. And according to the Syrian activists, they're starting to obtain some of the names that were found.
Do you think this is going to galvanize opposition in Syria?
Well, I think it is yet one more evidence if it all turns out to be confirmed. And I think right now we definitely know at least for 5 bodies that's been confirmed the extent of the violations committed against the civilians. And I spoke to a number of people from southern Syria, the Haran plain, Daraa, but also towns in like Enkhila and others. And the sense I got from talking to these people is they are not yet ready to give up on their protest. They feel that too many residents have been killed, too many protesters have been killed, too much destruction has been inflicted, and they are not just happy to, for things to turn a new page with the regime. They want apologies, they want investigation, and for many of them, they want to see a change with the regime. So I suspect it will galvanize people even further.
Just go over exactly what your source is for the claims that there's a mass grave there.
Sure. So I think yesterday we started seeing a lot of YouTube footage of the mass grave. Early on, it was very difficult to determine where that is. But later, footage surfaced which shows tractors, one of the first machines. And as the camera moved to the back, you could see that it was registered to Daraa, that it was Daraa plate. At the same time, a Syrian activist based in Cairo, Ahmad Kurabi, but with an extensive network inside Syria, told me that they knew about 2 mass graves. So this one mass grave, which included these 5 bodies, which are, according to his sources, from the Abi Zaid family, and that these bodies were returned to the Abi Zaid family to be buried properly. Mentioned the second mass grave, 4 bodies, that this mass grave has not been recognized yet by the Syrian authorities. We obviously need a transparent investigation here. The Syrian authorities are not to be trusted because they have been denying violations in the past. They have been contradicting themselves. And I think the important thing is to have the UN-mandated international investigation, the investigation that was set up by the Human Rights Council, which has yet to deploy to Syria, to make it a priority to examine these allegations because they are very grave. And I should say this is not the first time these allegations surface. We had heard it from people inside Daraa saying they're not returning the bodies and they are burying them in the field. But it was very hard to go public with that information because there was no independent confirmation. Now, we're just starting to see the first element, that seem to prove that such things happen. But obviously, more investigations are needed.
It remains very difficult to verify a number of claims from Syria. Last night, we were reporting claims that soldiers have crossed the Lebanese border and may be deported. You've got an update on that?
Sure. So there have been two news items that are separate. One, there were reports early this morning that 2 Syrian soldiers, were forcibly returned to Syria this morning. They had come over on Sunday. Now, we're getting mixed messages. BBC Arabic correspondent who was up there on Sunday said that these 2 soldiers had not escaped to Lebanon, but had been, in a way, forcibly moved to Lebanon by some Talkalakh residents who, wanted them to stop shooting and got them here, and that the Lebanese military intelligence, what they were doing is returning these 2 soldiers to their unit back in Syria. We have to double check that information. I think that just shows the difficulty of reporting on what's happening in Syria. But on the second, there's been other bits of information, which is that starting yesterday, that the Lebanese military are detaining some men from Tel Kalakh in Lebanon and may be returning them. Again, we have a team right now at the border since yesterday. They have not been able to confirm that, but we have another source that says they knew of 2 men from Tel Kalakh who were detained at the Lebanese army checkpoint. And we have yet to know what happened to these 2 men. So a lot of information to follow up on. It just shows yet again the difficulty of reporting in Syria in light of the blackout that they are trying to impose. But clearly very worried that the Lebanese authorities would return, protesters or people who had escaped from Syria back to Syria.
Today, the Syrian Ministry of Information claimed that more than 8,000 people had turned themselves in. That seems very implausible. What do you think is going on?
Well, look, I mean, it's interesting that number is very close to the number of people that human rights groups in Syria had said had been detained. So again, it's hard to know what is going on. Did these people really turn themselves in, or were they the ones who have actually been detained by the security services? And we know that the security services have detained people in the thousands. And again, so it all remains to be seen. But clearly, our main source of concern has been the massive waves of arrests in Syria, which have not only affected protesters and activists, but have also affected relatives of activists, and in some cases, even neighbors of activists. I mean, we have documented a number of instances where security forces showed up at an activist's house or an opposition figure's house, could not find that person, and instead took their son, took a brother. And in at least one case, they ended up taking 2 neighbors as a way to pressure them to give them information on where that activist was hiding.
Assad has promised a national dialogue. How do you see that playing out?
Look, obviously, we're a human rights group, and it's for the political parties and the opposition figures in Syria for them to decide whether to enter into dialogue or not. But I can tell you, I was talking to a few activists inside Syria and asking them their views about the dialogue, and they said, how can we have a dialogue when they are still detaining us, and they are still shooting at us? They were telling me that the Syrian authorities tell them stop protesting for a week, and then you will see we will start enacting reforms. And the protesters were responding, stop shooting at us for a day, and you will see that we can enter into substantive negotiation. I think the fundamental problem here is lack of trust. There's no trust between now, the protesters, the opposition figures, and the Syrian regime. And that's going to be, I think, the biggest challenge today in terms of moving forward. Because what we saw in Tunisia and in Egypt was the army stepping in and in a way acting as the guarantor of the good faith negotiations or the transition. In Syria, there is no independent player. So really it boils down to whether the protesters and activists are willing to trust President Bashar al-Assad or the authorities with sort of negotiating in good faith and ensuring transition. And for many of them, they have grave concerns because there's no trust.
Okay, Nadim, thanks for your time.
Thank you.